We've got some clarity at running back with Audric, Estime, and Blake Watson headed for waivers. We've got some decisions already made and plenty more yet to come down as the Broncos whittle their roster down to 53. Time to dive into all of it on Denver Football After Dark. Denver Football After Dark on a Tuesday morning. Roster deadline day around the NFL, the day to get down to 53 players from the 90, or in the Broncos case 91, although they did make some cuts official on Monday, and then there were a few that leaked out later Monday that will become official on Tuesday. Plenty more that we're going to learn about over the course of Tuesday. Of course, the guys you see there, Audric, Estime, and Blake Watson. They're two of the guys that we learned about. Blake Watson with an injury settlement after suffering a posterior cruciate ligament injury on Saturday, unfortunately. And Audric Estime, who had a pretty good game against the Saints in Saturday's preseason finale, but that wasn't enough for him to stick on the 53. He got going, he got into a rhythm, something that you don't often see in the preseason, a chance to get into a rhythm in such a game, but that wasn't enough. And so the Broncos, as of this moment, 4 running backs. Jaleel McLaughlin, R.J. Harvey, J.K. Dobbins, and Tyler Bidet. And if you go and check out my final roster projection over at denversports.com, those are the 4 that I have. I have them keeping Tyler Bidet on the 53. I think it was probably a pretty good indicator of things for Tyler Bidet on Saturday that he did see some first-team snaps. Of course, you did not have Jaleel McLaughlin back in Denver awaiting the birth of his baby. And, of course, J.K. Dobbins not playing in Saturday's game. But it does sort of show you that, that Tyler Bidet is running back 3. And we've sort of talked about that Tyler Bidet effectively is going to be and has been running back 3. The question being, would the Broncos roll the dice on exposing him to the waiver wire or not? Of course, because Bidet has been waived at the cut down 3 consecutive years. And at least in the last 9 cut downs at running back, there's nobody who fits the profile of a running back who's been waived that many times and then got waived again and got claimed. So that's the thing to consider. That got claimed with so few touches for his career is Tyler Bidet. Bidet, of course, only with 18 career touches. So that is in play. But I think pretty clearly what you're looking at is if something happens to R.J. Harvey or J.K. Dobbins, Tyler Bidet is RB3. In large part because he can pass protect, which is something that certainly Sean Payton values. Let's just take a look at the cuts that we do know right now here very early on as we do this in the wee small hours of Tuesday morning. The players that the Broncos have parted ways with, that's Mike Abraham at cornerback, Marcus Cox on the offensive line, Joaquin Davis, Michael Drumfor, Audric Estime, Andrew Farmer, Damarri Mathis. Andrew Farmer, the guy who kept making plays throughout the offseason and into training camp, just kind of a victim of a numbers game at edge rusher. And Damarri Mathis, Broncos looked to trade him, looked for a trade partner for him, someone who, as recently as early in the 2023 season was a starter, but struggled early that year and lost his job to Fabian Moreau, and was on the team last year, but brief snaps, couldn't get a grip back on playing time, and with the emergence of Chris Abrams' drain, really wasn't a place for him going forward, and he's in his 4th year, which means he's in his contract year. The bell was tolling for him around here. So then the next list, Garrett Nelson, Jerwan Newton, Kyrese Rowan. So we know 3 of the 4 undrafted rookie receivers we know on the waiver wire. Xavier Truss on the offensive line, Clay Webb, interior offensive line. One of the guys who got a big bonus from the Broncos, a big signing bonus, and it never really kind of launched, I think, as they expected he would over the course of the summer, and then injury settlements for Josh Pickett and Blake Watson. So, an interesting thing to note here as we talk about the players the Broncos parted ways with. They, of course, made some official on Monday. And that is actually worth noting here. The players they made official, because they announced 7 of them officially on Monday. Micah Abraham, Joaquin Davis, Michael Dwumfor, Andrew Farmer, Joshua Pickett, Xavier Truss, and Clay Webb. Audric Estime, Blake Watson, the others that were on those lists, they'll become official on Tuesday. And we actually learned some of those cuts. They leaked out on Sunday. So the significance of the names that became official Monday and hit the wire Monday, and there were a bunch of players around the league who hit the wire Monday. The significance there that is interesting is I went back and I looked at the Broncos' cuts over the previous 2 years with Sean Payton to see if any of the players that the Broncos announced on the Monday, the day before the deadline, if any of those players eventually were on the practice squad the day after they set the 53. And in both 2023 and 2024, none of the players that the Broncos waived Monday, a day before the deadline, were on the practice squad eventually, about 2 days later. So that is actually kind of something to note here. I mean, there's first time for everything, but that would seem to offer an indication perhaps of their plans. So like Joaquin Davis, for example, was on the list Monday. Kyrese Rowan and Jerwan Newton, they will be on the Tuesday list with all the other players cut. So that's something to consider here as we talk about how the Broncos may construct their practice squad. Again, like I said, first time for everything, but if you go by the previous 2 years, all the players that the Broncos brought back who were released or waived, all the players the Broncos brought back for their practice squad when they initially constructed it after the cuts were players that they parted ways with on the deadline day, not the day before. So you're always kind of looking for patterns. There's an interesting pattern. Appreciate that. Turn up your mic gain a tad. I actually, the way it is set up, it's like a smart mic gain, so it actually responds to it. It's not something that I have set. It basically it is programmed to take what I'm saying, and then, like, if I go far away, it's supposed to kind of adjust to it. If I come close, it's supposed to adjust to it as well. So I actually don't have. It's supposed to be kind of a smart thing, and it's supposed to adjust to it. So I hope it's usually been fine. So I have the same settings as I've had for every other show. So I respectfully, Studio Cat, I don't know why it's coming. I don't know why it would be coming in a bit different. So, are there any undrafted free agents left? Yeah, there are still a bunch of them on the roster. So the ones I think, like Courtney Jackson, we haven't heard anything about him yet. We have not heard anything about linebackers like Rene Reed or Jordan Turner. Of course, Jordan Turner had the huge game against the Cardinals in the second week of the preseason. So that's a name to keep your eye on, I think. So there's a chance that you may see. There's a chance you may see one of them. By the way, like debating the mic. Wasn't just me. It's fine. I don't. Whatever. I don't know. I don't know. So anyway, do I think Skinner will get cut? Well, I'm just going to I'll refer you to my article at denversports.com, my final roster projection, which I put up on Monday morning, and I have JL Skinner on my 53, and I actually did put 5 safeties in the end. There were some revisions from the 53 that I had last week. I went from 6 receivers to 5, so Devon Bailey being out, I end up not having an undrafted rookie receiver on the 53. And I had 5 safeties, and I included P.J. Locke, even though, yes, the Broncos could create $4 million of cap room by releasing P.J. Locke. I think keeping him is probably the more prudent move there, especially when you have one of your starting 2 safeties who had a significant injury 2 years ago. Of course, Talanoa Hufanga with the ACL, and he did have another injury last year. So having P.J. Locke, an experienced starter, someone that you expect to be better if he comes back in now that he's healthy. Remember, last year he's playing injured, especially down the stretch. Like the P.J. Locke we saw late in the season, that's not the P.J. Locke we know. That's not the P.J. Locke that when he came in 2023, you didn't miss Kareem Jackson because he played better than K-Jack was playing. So the P.J. Locke going out there now, if he has to step in, that would be more of an ideal P.J. So that's a guy I think probably should be on the 53. So I would say J.L. Skinner, he's somebody that Darren Rizzi seems to like. He talked about scouting him in the pre-draft process in 2023. He is a core 4 player on special teams. And we know Sean Payton places importance on that. There are going to be some roster spots determined by special teams. So because of that, I expect you're going to see Sam Franklin. I've got him on my 53. I've got J.L. Skinner on my 53. I've got Trent Sherfield on my 53. I mean, Trent Sherfield, the guarantee on his contract basically says he's on the 53. I've got Justin Sternad on the 53, not just because he's got some starting experience that he picked up last year mostly, as well as back in 2021, but he's another core special teamer. I think you'll see Q Robinson end up having a prominent role on special teams as well. Certainly that's in his background coming out of Alabama. Gives him a chance to have a nice initial role as he steps onto the roster. And of course, I think Chris Abrams' drain he's on the team. He's a no-doubter on the 53. I think they'll find a role for him on the active game day roster because of what he can do on special teams. These are guys that are kind of becoming some of your core players on that phase. So, why do I have the Team Canada pennant? I'm curious. Just like it. Just a pennant I like. That's all. Is there a list of who's getting cut? I'll throw that up again here of the guys we know, just to kind of reset here, the graphic here. So let me just get your comment off here so we can see it. So the reset, the guys that we know that the Broncos are waiving: Micah Abraham, Marcus Cox, Joaquin Davis, Michael Dwumfor, who recently signed, of course, Audric Estime, Andrew Farmer, Damarri Mathis, and Garrett Nelson, Jerwan Newton, Kyrese Rowan, Xavier Truss, Clay Webb, and then the two guys there that are waived injured, Josh Pickett and Blake Watson. So those are the players that have been waived so far, or they will be waived. Some of them have officially been waived. The ones that have officially been waived already are Abraham, Davis, Dwumfor, Farmer, Pickett, Truss, and Webb. The others, they will become official on Tuesday, along with the rest of the roster moves will become official Tuesday afternoon. So, anyway, that's just to reset it. It's even though I'm for those who are coming in live, it's just kind of good to reset that. That's the news as we're talking about this. And by the way, those you're going to watch the show, there are going to be people who will watch the show in the morning, and probably some aspects of this show are going to be out of date by 9 a.m., 10 a.m. Mountain Time, because we're going to learn a lot more of these names as we get into the morning hours. We're gonna probably get our arms around a bunch of the names as we get to 7:30, 8 a.m., 8:30, 9 a.m. in the morning. We're gonna find out more guys who are going to be waived. We'll probably know most of them, I would guess, by mid-morning, because that's just sort of how we end up getting these guys, getting these guys' names, and these things end up dripping out. So anyway, the odds of Blake Watson being on the team, 53, are practiced during the regular season. Yeah, the injury settlement makes it interesting. I mean, there could still be some interest in him. I mean, a team can obviously pick him up on when you're waived injured. A team can pick him up and just throw him on there right now. If he passes through, I would not be surprised to see him come back. Again, he's going to be on that Tuesday cluster with everybody else. So I think some of it may even depend on the length of the injury settlement as well. Like if it's a short injury settlement, if it's like the equivalent of, say, 1, 2, 3 weeks even, I could see a window where if nobody claims him, he could be back. I would say between Watson and Estime, he is definitely the more likely of the two to come back. I would say the door's more likely to be shut on Estime, and I think there may be a team that claims him, especially because he's not injured right now and because he was a draft pick. Probably a little more likely that he's going to be claimed. So, Joaquin Davis back to the practice squad. I'd say probably the fact that they waived him on Monday as the teams are making their cuts Tuesday, that would seem to be pretty good. But one thing I mentioned earlier in the show is that in the Sean Payton era, the last 2 years, the Broncos have not brought a player that they officially waived on Monday, the day before the Tuesday cutdown. They have not brought a player that they waived on Monday back. So I think this is one of those instances where what we thought in our little media cluster from the sideline, what we thought of Joaquin Davis may not have been what they thought internally of him. I think we were impressed by some of the work he did, but perhaps the Broncos were not as impressed. So, anyway, so how many more cuts they have? So, we've got 12 there. So that would be 12, and I think they have to get down to 53. So we know 12. And if they were at, I believe they were at, I think they were at 90. They could have been at 91, but they made a couple of moves. So I don't know so I believe that would, if they were at 91, they would obviously have to make 26 more to get there. But don't quote me on this, but I want to say they were at 90, not 91. So anyway. And if they were at 90, they would have 25. So, I just don't know that off the top of my head. So, Estime wouldn't go on Broncos practice squad. Well, this is the other thing. Players do have a choice, and this is something that may come up at wide receiver. You may see a receiver say, I've got a better chance elsewhere, like Jalen Virgil decided that last year, that he was going to cast his lot elsewhere. Joaquin Davis will be back. We'll see. Like I said earlier, there's a first time for everything, and so maybe there's a first time for a player being waived on Monday to come back to the Broncos practice squad 2 days later. So, as Gary Kubiak would say, we're fixing to find out. I'm just reporting to you what the trend has been in the Sean Payton era, that all of the players that the Broncos have waived on Monday, the day before the actual deadline, all of them did not return to the practice squad. That all the players the Broncos brought back were among the Tuesday cuts. So that's just something to consider here. Is the waiver wire for acquisitions only open for a finite amount? Well, basically what it is you submit your moves to the league, and then the league puts out the transaction wire, and then you've got until the following morning to make your potential waiver claims. And then the league takes those and they say, and then if there are multiple teams that make the claim on the player, then the team that has the higher priority gets the player. And the priority is, at this time of year, it is simply based on your record last year. And if you want to know the priority claim, just go by first round draft order. So Tennessee has the first priority. Any player Tennessee wants off the waiver wire on Wednesday, Tennessee gets. And then all the way down to Philadelphia having 32nd priority. So the Broncos, as you know, would be 20th. And if you put in a claim for a player and you get him, then you have to be prepared to waive somebody to make room. So that's why there's that 24 hours right after where some guys can't celebrate. I mean, I'll give you an example to chew on here. River Craycraft. Do y'all remember him? River Craycraft, 2019. Wide receiver, also potential punt returner. Well, he makes the 53. But John Elway gets up there at the press conference on cutdown day and says the Broncos are looking to add a punt returner off the waiver wire. That meant River Craycraft was endangered. And true to his word, River Craycraft was gone. The Broncos added Deontay Spencer. They claimed him off waivers. He had been waived by the Pittsburgh Steelers. By the way, Deontay Spencer, one of my favorite things about him was my autocorrect always corrected his name to detonate, like a bomb detonated. So, anyway. Craycraft walks so Hunter Renfrow could run. Caden Prescorn, surprised he wasn't in that series of cuts. I think Caden Prescorn is the guy they want to see on the practice squad. So it doesn't. I think that's a guy that probably is going to be in the Tuesday round of cuts as well. So it didn't surprise me that we didn't see his name today. Assume there hasn't been any surprises yet. I know tomorrow may be difficult. Yeah, nothing surprising to this point. I think I was surprised that we saw Joaquin Davis's name so early. I was surprised we saw his name leak out on Sunday. That was a bit of a surprise to me. But other than that, there's no name I have seen so far that has made me say, wow, that hasn't happened yet. In fact, I was asked by Dan Jacobs over on the radio side on Sunday, was I expecting any surprise cuts? And I didn't. I mean, I know, we were, a couple of us on the report, on the media side, we were talking in New Orleans and just saying, oh, what if there was a shock cut? And we sort of said, well, I mean, Ben Powers hasn't had a great camp, and would it be him? But the contract, just, you can't do that. It would make no sense contractually in terms of dead money. So, that's not happening. So, and that's another thing that kind of comes into play is contracts. And also, with Ben Powers, he's a guy that was literally top 5 in the league last year in run block win rate and pass block win rate. So if you weren't happy with him, you trade him. There would be a market for him out there based on those metrics alone, even if you didn't think, even if you're like, oh, he's not having a good camp and he doesn't fit what we're doing, hypothetically, someone would want him. Somebody would, absolutely. There's no way there'd be no market for someone who's a 6-year veteran who just had the kind of season that he had. Someone would look at those analytics and say, we want him. There'd be a market for him. So that's why. It was one of those things we just kind of tossed out and then kind of quickly dismissed as no, realistically, that's not going to happen. And so I didn't really, because if PJ Locke were released, I'm not sure that would be a shock cut based on the fact he's coming off spinal fusion surgery. And there's the $4 million saved on the cap if you part ways with him. And then after the Tim Patrick cut last year, would it be that much of a surprise? Because it's kind of similar with a player coming back from a significant injury and the cap savings. So, again, maybe it is one of those. Maybe it's one of those things where I guess I'm just not easily shocked. To me, a shock was TJ Ward in 2017. That's a shock cut. I don't see anything like that happening this year. So, anyway. Man, last night hurt without my midnight mace. Thankful I'm here tonight. Yeah, thought about doing it last night, but I was at my mom's place. By the way, thanks for the kind words. I know a lot of people asked how she's doing. She's doing well. It was good to get down to Florida, catch up with her for a couple of days. But yeah, I thought about doing a show last night, but just wanted to just spend some time with her, chatting and all that, and kind of be in the moment and be present. Be present down there. It's important. There was a late sports talk host down in the Tampa Bay area who would say, "Hey, tell someone you love them," and I think that's important to do from time to time. So I would say that as well. So Ronald Ortiz, locked in the best Broncos coverage. What's up? Hope you enjoyed family time. Back to the grind. Yep, back to the grind. Back to the schedule. And someone asked, what's the practice schedule this week? I don't have it yet. Sometimes the Broncos have a habit of letting us know the practice schedule at the last possible minute. The last time they had a Saturday preseason game, there was a practice on Tuesday. So I'm expecting a practice on Tuesday. In fact, 2 years ago, when they had a game on Saturday and a practice on a Tuesday, Michael Bandy practiced. And then after the practice was informed that he was waived, and then of course they brought him back to the practice squad. So that's actually going to be an interesting thing, that if they practice on Tuesday and it's open to those of us who are in the fourth estate, of course we're going to be sitting there and we're going to be, taking attendance like we always do, check, 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 check. That they give us a printed roster as we walk into practice. I mean, they hand them. You can say yes, you can say no. I always say yes and take a printed roster, and then we take attendance and check, 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 check. Yeah, and then like, oh, so and so wasn't here, so and so wasn't here, and needless to say, on a cut day, we will all be taking attendance quite diligently, because there could be some notable things out there, right? So, anyway. So, yeah. Call your mother and father and tell them you love them. Yep. Every Mother's Day, I on social media, I share the old Bear Bryant commercial that he did for a phone company not many years before he passed on, where he talks about telling his players when they get to campus to send a letter or a postcard home right then, and he says, and at the end he ad libs the final line of the commercial. He says, "Have you called your mama today?" And then he ad libs, "I sure wish I could call mine." And they left it in the commercial, and it just kind of always gets me, just anyway. So yes, yeah, whether it's your mother, your parents, or your people who are close to you, yes, tell someone you love them. So I'm here for you. I enjoy chatting with you as well. So the vibe around the Broncos on Cut Eve. I mean, I'm not around them, in person. The vibe's never great on Cut Eve, though. It's always tough. It's good, it's goodbyes, it's garbage bags. There's never a good vibe on this day. And the first practice after is always eerie, because it's that day, like you look around and all of a sudden it's gone from a practice with 90 players to a practice with like 53, especially if they haven't set the practice squad by then, and it's like a ghost town. That is rough. That's where it's cutthroat, and that's the rough part of the business. Do I think Jaleel or Tyler or one of them will get cut? No, I think they're both going to be on the 53. I've got 4 running backs on my 53, and both of them are going to be there. Do I think Benito's contract will be done this year or next? I think it's getting done in the next few weeks. So I'm not too worried about that. And when Nick Benito talked about it, he did not sound like a man who was terribly concerned about that either. So I think all is going to be good, all is well, and I believe you're going to have that. And do I believe wide zone is coming with a learning curve? Absolutely. And I would say this: you are probably sacrificing some early proficiency, maybe even early dominance, for hopefully being, I don't want to say unstoppable, but hopefully being terrific down the stretch. I would also say this on the Broncos, and I would even say on Sean Payton and his offenses. Sean Payton's offenses have not been great. If you just, let's just go by top line numbers here. The last 4 years that Sean Payton's had offenses, so this actually includes his last year with Drew Brees. Sean Payton's last season with Drew Brees, the New Orleans Saints ranked 12th in total offense. They were 28th and 21 the year they started with Jameis Winston, and then Winston got injured, and then everything fell apart. Broncos were 26th in total offense in 23, and they were 19th in 24. Now, they were 14th in total offense from October onward. So there was progress. There was growth. But that's 4 years where he hasn't been top 10, and it's last 3 years where they've been below the top half of the league. Understand this. Sean Payton, as a play caller, until 2021, never had an offense that was in the bottom half of the league. Never. His first season as a play caller with the Giants, they were 13th in the league total offense in 2000 when he was OC. Okay? So, just to go over his rankings in total offense. 13th, 9th, 6th. And then we go to New Orleans. When he gets to New Orleans as head coach, total offense, 1st, 4th, 1st, 6th, 1st, 4th, 1st, 2nd, 1st, 2nd, 8th, 9th, and then 12th the last season with Drew Brees. And then since then, 28th, 26th, 19th. So, one thing that I do respect about Sean Payton is that he does take a look at himself and a look at what goes on and evaluates. There is self-reflection. It may not seem that way sometimes if you hear him talk, because certainly there's a lot of confidence there, and certainly with the Super Bowl quotes there can be some bravado, but he does take a very critical eye to what he's doing, what his staff is doing, what goes on, to say what's working, what isn't, how can we be better. And I don't have any doubt that he's looked at his offenses the last few years and has said, why aren't we as successful as we have been? And certainly that last year with Drew Brees being outside the top 10 shows that, okay, there was something starting to happen even then. Now, Brees did miss some time that year. That was, of course, a year where Taysom Hill did make some starts. But he had top 10 offenses with the Giants back when he had Kerry Collins, right? I mean, so it's just something to think about. Sean Payton is not used to having offenses that aren't top 10 or even top half, and that's something that he hasn't had. It's something that has eluded him. I mean, even in his years in Dallas, they were top half of the league. It wasn't a great offense, but they were 15th, 14th, 13th. Being in the back half of the league in offense is just not something that the Sean Payton offense does. But it's what has been the case the last 3 years. So I think some of this is as simple as, what are we missing? How do we get better? How do we get this right? So it's fair. Like I I think you have to you look at everything. Now, do I think they'll bounce back? Do I think they should be on the right side of things? Will they have a top half of the league offense? Perhaps top 10? They ought to. Bo Nix should improve. They've invested in the running back position. They do believe that their investments at running back will improve it. I mean, you know, just Javonte Williams, they let him go. Audric Estime was in the mix. They let him go. I mean, it appears that the survivors are, as of right now, it seems like the survivors are going to be, at least from the primary mix last year, the survivors will, from the playoff game, will be Joey McLaughlin and Tyler Bidet, but they may be in lesser roles than they were last year, but we'll see. As Gary Kubiak would say, we're fixing to find out. He hadn't had a great defense either. Yeah, the success equation is different for Sean Payton right now. He's riding the defense a bit, but imagine what this team could be if it has a splendid defense and a splendid offense. I mean, they can get it right. If they can get it right on both sides of the ball, sure, then everything is at their disposal. The whole breadth of possibilities are there for them for the taking. So, if they keep 4 running backs, they keep 6 receivers. Well, right now in my projection, I got 5 receivers and 4 running backs. I've got 9 offensive linemen, and that includes Frank Crum sticking for a second straight year. I think it was interesting that they had Matt Parrott at left guard, and I asked Sean Payton about that after the game, and what he said was that there are some players who instead of like preferring to be swing tackles left and right side, that they prefer like a side. They prefer to be on the left side or the right side, which implied that Matt prefers to be a left side backup rather than left tackle, right tackle. They'd rather be just left tackle, left guard backup rather than left tackle, right tackle, which I think is it's kind of notable in terms of how they plug him in, but they certainly like Matt, and I think they're willing to kind of work with that because they like him in terms of what he provides depth wise. I mean, they liked him enough to re-sign him, but it certainly changes the dynamic a bit because in terms of how you structure the depth, because now it's like, okay, you have Alex Palczewski who's your backup at right tackle, and so if you have McGlinchey and Palcho go down, it wouldn't necessarily be Matt going over to right tackle. It would probably be Frank Crum, right? Because it looks like Parrott is your left side backup, and maybe Crum is like your next backup at right tackle. Just changes how you rearrange the pieces there. So here's hoping Frank Crum evolves to his full potential. I mean, you had to give him time. I mean, he's fast, he's long. If he can take that mold of clay and build him into something, he can be special. And I do like the fact that this offseason, wherever you saw Bo, you seem to see Frank Crum. He's kind of like his bodyguard, his protector almost. You also saw Nick Gargiulo. Man, it's so sad that he had that injury as well. So Powers has to grow or go. Well, he'll be around this year, but in terms of incorporating wide zone principles, adapt or die. That's, as Billy Beane would say, adapt or die. The benefits of wide zone, because I mean it does require collaboration, it does require athleticism, But the benefits of wide zone are if you get it going, every play looks similar firing off the snap. And thus you force that half second to 1 second of hesitation for the defense as it reacts to it. And that gives you an advantage. That's what I mean. Sort of the simplest thing that as it was explained to me many years ago is it takes more work to master because of the cohesion involved with it. It's not something you can get overnight. It's harder to plug in players for it. But once you get it down, once the unit has it mastered, it becomes the most difficult thing to stop. So it's something that you may have to play the long game with here, and it may just be something where you're going to live with the bumps for a while. But by the back half of this season, if it works, then maybe you're seeing this thing really hum. But in the short term, might be bulky at times. So, can Chris Abrams Drain be a gunner? Heck, he can be a gunner. He can be a darn good one, in my opinion. Like, based on what I see when he's gunner and jammer, when I see him out there, he and J.L. Skinner, those guys fly down the field. Why are they so nonchalant about Crawshaw? Because they've seen him day in and day out in practice, and right now they're trusting the sample size, the broader sample size of practice versus 6 punts in a game. I mean, basically, when they do punt periods in practice, when they have a punt day in practice, he punts 20 to 24 times. He's had 6 punts in the games. So, typically in training camp, every other day is a punt day. So, that would be just in training camp alone. That would be what? That means we've seen roughly training camp plus the last week of practices. We've probably seen, I think, and then joint practice, and then OTAs as well. So we had 10 OTAs and days of OTAs in mini camp, and then we would have had warm up day 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19. So we've had 29 days. So we've had about 14 or 15 days with punts and roughly 20 punts a day. So they've seen 300 punts, approximately. They're going to go by the 300 punt sample size of what they've got rather than 6 in a game, and they're going to trust that. That's why Darren Rizzi, when he's asked, are you going to bring another punter, he's saying no right now. And I say right now because if you get to a game that counts and it starts costing you something, then this is where kind of the psychology comes in. Head coaches don't like to think about the kicking game and the punting game. Even though Sean Payton places a great deal of importance on special teams, no head coach likes to think about the kicker or the punter. For them, it's like the light switch, as in you flick it and it's supposed to just turn on. You don't think about it. It's there. Oh, the light turns on. That's it. Oh, the kick goes through. That's it. The punt. Oh, it's a solid punt. But if you have to think about it because you're worrying about it because the punter is screwing up, after a while you're like, we better get another guy. So right now, they're trusting the sample size. It's like, okay, we've seen this guy punt 300 times, and about 1 out of every 10 is a dud, but 90% of them are good to great. Instead of the 6 punt sample size in the preseason where he's had one where it was a missile and and then one that was kind of meh, and then 4 that really weren't what you wanted. So they're trusting the broader sample size. It's kind of the baseball thing here. But if you see some results that are problematic in the games, I think probably it's about, I think it's about 3 or 4 weeks before you start getting to where, all right, we got to do something here. So, Blake Watson, waived, injured. That's the status. He'll be officially waived, injured tomorrow. So, or today, I should say. Caleb Lohner, how do you feel about his situation? I don't have him on my 53 right now. Right on the border. I'll just throw a number at you real quick here. In the last 3 years, that's 9 out of 59 players that were drafted in that year's draft class that were claimed off waivers on the day after the deadline. And so that is significant because that means 15% of current year draftees that were waived on deadline day were claimed off waivers versus 3.99% of all other players that were claimed off waivers on the day after the deadline. In other words, players like Caleb Lohner, drafted that year, waived, roughly 4 times as likely to be claimed by another team off waivers than all other players. Food for thought. And a reason why the Broncos might keep Caleb Lohner on the 53 if they truly value him and want to continue his development. So, that's something to think about. Like, they may look at that and say, whoa, 4 times as likely to be claimed, at least in the last 3 years. We may not want to roll the dice there. So, anyway. Don't you think one of those punts are going to count? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, if he has a bad punt and it costs them, then that's when the coach is going to be upset. Right now, it hasn't cost them anything. And right now they're saying, okay, most of these punts are good, and they're just waiting for that to materialize when it counts. So I don't think you're gonna see it just yet, because what they see every day is like, okay, we're seeing all these missiles out here. We know the leg. It's like we know the leg is good enough. Here's another thing also. So you hear Sean Payton talk about Thomas Morstead, the punter that he had for years in New Orleans. Like, had him in 2009. Drafted him in the 5th round. Okay? Was the only, from that point forward, Thomas Morstead was the only punter Sean Payton had. Okay? Thomas Morstead's worst season, net 36 yards, was his rookie season, 2009. He got better. He went from 36 to 38.4 in year 2, and then 43.1 in year 3, 43.2 in year 4 when he was a second-team All-Pro. And Sean Payton never had another punter from that point forward. He was 43.2. He was second-team All-Pro the year Sean Payton was away when he was suspended. But basically, 43.1 in year 3, So this is something to remember, as well. Or pardon me, but he had no, never had didn't have another punter until 2021. So he found his guy for almost the entire time he was in New Orleans, and of course, as we saw earlier in training camp, he still talks about Thomas Morstead. So that's, I think, something to remember, his own experience. And we know how Sean Payton leans on his experience and talks about New Orleans and talks about how things went there. His experience will tell him, if I've got this guy who's got a cannon leg, I've probably got to be patient with him. So that is actually something. It's something to think about. I mean, I wouldn't even put it past him to, if it isn't working, I wouldn't put it past him to sign a punter and have two punters and deactivate Crawshaw and let him figure it out and not be active. Because I think they're sold on his leg and they're sold on him long term. So that is another thing to consider as well. But they're pretty high. They're pretty high on this guy. That's all I can tell you. That they are pretty high on this guy. Any info on possibly trading PJ? Have not heard anything one way or another. How ready I think Greenlaw will be for game one percentage wise? I mean, he'll be good to go. He's gonna play. He's going to play in that game unless he tweaks something between now and then. So I don't think he'll have any restrictions. He's already practicing full go. So the only thing is they didn't play him in the preseason game. I think some of that is, it's on turf. I think some of that is also risk reward. I think the same thing with J.K. Dobbins on Saturday. Risk reward. With Dobbins, it's like, okay, do you really want to? The way I put it on another show is, do you want to play pressure luck in preseason with a guy like him? So, do I think Courtney Jackson makes the team with standalone returning ability? I've got him not on the 53, but I think he can pass through the practice squad and then he can effectively be your backup returner there. So watching out for the Colts, Caleb Lohner, if he doesn't make the Broncos 53. The other thing on the Colts and Caleb Lohner is the Colts have a history with basketball players and tight ends. It's even going in the Wayback Machine, Marcus Pollard, but in relatively recent history, it's Mo Alley Cox coming from a school that doesn't have football at all, VCU football still undefeated. They bring him in, they played the long game with him and developed him into a solid tight end. So the Colts as an organization, it didn't surprise me they had interest in Caleb Lohner, because that's kind of part of their DNA is, hey, we'll take a chance on a basketball player. It's kind of apt that an Indiana team, we all know how big basketball is in that state. It's kind of apt that an Indiana team definitely takes a look at basketball players and developing them as tight ends. It seems very good for them. So, Badea much better return than Jackson was. Well, the other thing Courtney Jackson's probably not going to be active if he's on the 53 as a sixth wide receiver, and the returner next to Marvin Mims Jr. on kickoffs is probably going to be a running back, skill set wise anyway. So it's going to almost certainly be Badea. So that's another thing there. I mean, Courtney Jackson is probably your backup returner if Marvin Mims Jr. is injured, and then he steps up and handles punt and kickoff. So the question is, do you have that on the 53, or is that backup on the practice squad? Are you rolling the dice and trying to slip him through there? That's another thing, and that's That's debatable. Can you slip him through or not? Did he show too much? Is a team interested in that? The one thing to kind of throw in there is these set of numbers, which tells you wide receiver, third least likely to be claimed off waivers. Part of that is because almost every team has a wide receiver, undrafted type or late round type that they like. And so most teams are trying to get a receiver to the practice squad, and they have somebody in mind that they want to bring back that they are waiving. So they're more focused on bringing back their own guy than claiming somebody else. So your odds are pretty good that you're going to get a player back. That's the one thing to consider. So, again, these are not saying that it may necessarily happen this time, but these are the types of trends and numbers that teams do consider when they make these moves. They're taking calculated risks based on trends. So, through training camp has Riley progressed. Are we talking about Riley Moss? I mean, he's having a good camp. So, I mean, if we're talking about Riley Moss, he's done well. He's still your CB. He's still your starting cornerback. Nobody's pushed him out. Jahdae Barron has not done that. Barron's gotten better as camp has gone on, and I think now maybe you've got a real debate with him or Jaquan McMillan. I thought Barron looked really good, really instinctive, really quick on Saturday. But Riley Moss is your CB2. I don't think there's any question about that. And I think you've actually got an interesting question potentially next year when you get into Riley Moss's contract year. Because you're starting to get to a point where you can't keep everybody. So if Jahdae Barron wasn't on the board in the NFL draft, which wide receiver would the Broncos have taken? I don't think they would have taken a receiver there. I think they would have traded down. I think you're actually going down a very interesting alternate history there in the draft. The Broncos maybe accumulate a few more picks. They have a different set of picks. Is it possible that maybe you're looking at a tight end coming in there on day 2? I think there's an alternate history where the Broncos have both Harold Fanning Jr. and Pat Bryant. Food for thought. So that's something to consider. Shout out to Mace for keeping us keeping us sleepless company. Yep, but I'm about to fade out here, so we still have Kyrese Rowan. Kyrese Rowan will be waived officially on Tuesday. We learned on Monday night that he will hit the waiver wire. So the only receiver we do not yet have an answer on, yes or no, among the undrafted rookies is Courtney Jackson. Joaquin Davis officially waived Monday. Kyrese Rowan, Jerwan Newton, we learned late Monday, that they will be officially waived on Tuesday. So, all right, Denver football after dark here on Tuesday morning, discussing the cuts, what we know, what we don't know. Just going to reset what we know here in terms of the cuts. Micah Abraham, Marcus Cox, Joaquin Davis, Michael Drumfor, Audric Estime, Andrew Farmer, Damarri Mathis, Garrett Nelson, Jerwan Newton, Kyrese Rowan, Xavier Truss, Clay Webb, and then Josh Pickett and Blake Watson. Those are the players with injury settlements. So those are what we know. We'll get to the ones that we don't on Tuesday. We'll probably find out plenty of them very early in the morning, I would say. So we'll probably know most of them, and then we'll probably discern maybe the rest of them as we get out to practice potentially. And then that'll be it. It's the roughest day on the calendar. Don't fade out. I'm headed to work. I appreciate that on hell, but I've had a long day, and I had a flight, and I'm gonna fall asleep. I'm gonna get my iPad out. I fall asleep watching something, and usually I get into a thing. Just my last thing before I go. I get into a phase where I fall asleep to the same thing, like a movie or an old thing. Lately, I have been falling asleep on YouTube to a highlight film. It's two highlight films. It's strung together in a row of the ACC tournament from 1977 and 1979. I mean, it is like I am. It's obscure. It's in the weeds, but it's very me and my sports interests. So anyway, it's comfort food for me. If you want to know probably what was on the television in the house in March 1977 or March 1979, it was probably that. So anyway, I'm gonna fall asleep to a little basketball, and hope you guys have a great Tuesday morning. Thanks for watching this edition of Denver Football After Dark. We'll be back tomorrow to discuss the roster being at 53, who's still with the Broncos, who's not. Dive into sort of the implications, what's next, and probably project the practice squad, what we may expect to see as the Broncos construct that 16-player practice squad on Wednesday as well. Appreciate you all being here, joining me for this edition of Denver Football After Dark. Wherever you are, thank you. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, of course. If you enjoy this, tell your friends about this little channel, and I'll have plenty more throughout the week. So take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Denver Football After Dark. Take care, everyone.